If the Strait of Hormuz gets choked hard enough, the AI boom doesn't just get more expensive, it starts losing inputs it literally can't replace. And honestly, that's the part almost nobody's talking about. Quick favor before we go deeper. I'm a small new YouTube channel, and if you like these straight plain English breakdowns, hit subscribe. It helps the channel a lot, and it helps YouTube push this to more people who actually want the real story. Now, here's what's really going on. Everybody's watching oil in the Strait of Hormuz. And yeah, fair enough. If the strait gets messy, oil gets messy. That part's obvious. But oil is only the loudest part of the story. The nastier part is all the other stuff moving through that same choke point that the AI boom depends on. Because if those flows get hit hard enough, this stops being one of those great energy prices are annoying again stories and turns into an AI supply problem. And you should care about that, because right now, AI infrastructure is doing a stupid amount of heavy lifting for the economy. So if the thing holding up the story has a weak spot, you probably want to know where that weak spot is. And no, it's not just chips in the vague headline sense. It's everything behind the chips. AI runs on compute. Compute runs on memory. And memory doesn't come from magic. It comes out of a really tight, really physical, really annoying industrial system. A few companies make it at scale. They need gases, they need chemicals, they need power, they need shipping, they need fabs, they need everything showing up more or less when it's supposed to. So while everybody's staring at oil, the actual AI stack is sitting there exposed to a whole pile of pressure points at once. Helium, LNG, sulfur, copper, noble gases, petrochemicals. That's not one problem, that's a stack of problems. And that's the part people really aren't pricing in. That's also why it's a mistake to talk about AI like it's just software. It's software sitting on top of a giant physical machine that needs everything to keep showing up on time. And fabs aren't built for long, ugly, multi-lane disruption. They're built for throughput, timing, precision. They're built for a world where inputs arrive, the power stays on, and nobody starts screwing with the arteries of global trade. That is not the world we're in now. And that's where the AI story stops looking futuristic and starts looking fragile. Because now you get to the concentration problem. Taiwan matters too much. South Korea matters too much. And sure, that looks efficient when everything is calm. But the world is not calm. Taiwan sits at the center of advanced semiconductor production. South Korea sits at the center of memory. So if the broader region gets shakier, that isn't some side issue for AI, because there aren't 10 interchangeable backup systems sitting around waiting to save the day. This is concentration. And concentration always looks smart, right up until it starts looking stupid. That's what this is, a bottleneck wearing a growth story. And here's where people still undershoot the danger. When people hear supply shock, they usually think, okay, stuff gets more expensive, margins get squeezed, maybe the market freaks out for a bit. That's the shallow version. If the inputs get squeezed hard enough, this stops being a cost story and starts becoming a constraint story. That's worse, a lot worse. Because costs rising is one thing. Constraints mean slower output, delayed projects, tighter allocation, harder trade-offs, and the AI build-out slamming into real physical limits. That changes the story completely, because AI is being sold like this clean, magical digital future. But underneath it is a dirty industrial machine. Factories, cooling, chemicals, electricity, wiring, shipping, replacement cycles, timing. That machine doesn't like war. It doesn't like choke points. It doesn't like missing gases, delayed chemicals, tighter energy, or transport risk. And it really doesn't like it when demand is already maxed out before the disruption even starts. That's what makes this dangerous. Not just that the AI boom gets more expensive, that it starts running into things money can't instantly fix. And once you see it that way, the question changes. It stops being who has the flashiest model, and it becomes who controls something scarce, who can still source, Who can still build? Who can still deliver? That's the game. So let's talk about who actually benefits if this thing starts breaking. Not the hype names, the bottleneck names. First bucket, semiconductor equipment, ASML, KLA, Lam Research. Why? Because if the response to this mess is build more, fix bottlenecks, improve yields, squeeze more out of existing capacity, these are the guys selling the tools for that. They're not betting on one chatbot. They're not betting on one flashy app. They're getting paid on the industrial response to scarcity itself. That's a much cleaner setup. Now obviously, this can still go sideways. If the shock gets so bad that expansion freezes instead of accelerates, these names can get hit too. So no, this isn't magic, but it's a strong bucket if the story becomes build and optimize. Second bucket, memory, Micron. And honestly, this is probably the purest direct bottleneck trade in the whole setup. If memory is where the squeeze shows up first, Micron is right there in the blast zone, which is great if you're right, and painful if the cycle rolls over. That's why I'd treat it like a window trade, not some forever love story. But if you believe the memory bottleneck gets worse before it gets better, it's one of the cleanest names on the board. Third bucket, baseload power, Constellation, Vistra. This one is less obvious, but it matters. If LNG risk, grid stress, and energy volatility all get uglier, stable baseload power gets more valuable, fast. These aren't AI companies in the cute marketing sense. They're power companies sitting underneath AI infrastructure. And if everyone's obsessing over chips while ignoring the power needed to run the whole machine, they're only looking at half the problem. Now, let's not get stupid here. These names have already run hard, so you're not early, but that doesn't automatically kill the thesis. Fourth bucket, copper, Freeport-McMoRan. This one is boring, which is exactly why it matters. AI doesn't get built without copper. Every data center, every cable, every transformer, every power upgrade, every board, every connection. So you're not buying AI hype here. You're buying the metal that still has to go into the machine. And in setups like this, the boring stuff is very often the real story. Fifth bucket, industrial gases. Linde. Because if helium and specialty gases get weird, fabs don't just get annoyed, they get stuck. That's why this one matters. It's not the sexy bucket, it's not the moonshot bucket, it's the toll booth bucket. And toll booths tend to do pretty well when everybody else is scrambling. So, that's the setup as I see it. Not buy this, not personal advice, just how I'd frame the map if the AI supply chain starts getting tight. If you're thinking in buckets, it's basically semi-cap equipment, ASML, KLA, Lam, memory, Micron, baseload power, Constellation, Vistra, copper, Freeport, industrial gases, Linde. That framework's a lot more useful than just yelling buy AI and hoping you pick the right hype name. And yeah, this can still go sideways. If the conflict cools off fast, the shortage trade cools off too. If the AI build-out slows, semi-cap and memory can get smacked. If power names stay crowded, they can roll over. If copper gets hit on global growth fears, that gets messy. So no, none of this is guaranteed. The point isn't these can't lose. The point is, if the AI supply chain starts breaking, these are the names that stop being background noise and start being the bottleneck. That's the real takeaway. Because in a shortage, the market usually ends up rewarding whoever controls the bottleneck, whoever sells the tools, or whoever keeps the machine running when everybody else is scrambling. And that is a very different list from the usual flashy AI winners. So yes, everyone is watching oil in the Strait of Hormuz. But the real story is what happens when that stress bleeds into the AI supply chain underneath it. And if it does, the biggest winners probably aren't going to be the loudest names. They're going to be the ones controlling something scarce.